bridge that takes the main lines over the heritage line was always going to be a tricky thing to model. Keep watching and see how it turned out. Hi everyone, I'm Martin and welcome back to Donnington Castle Model Railway. Now I'm supposed to be laying the main lines. Now I've got this kind of top baseboard in place. However, I keep getting distracted by little projects, and one of those was building a bridge. Now that is the bridge that's going to take our main lines over the top of our heritage line. And it was worrying me a little bit because of the strange geometry. Also, I wanted to make sure that it looked very different to the tunnels that you can probably just about make out over my shoulder here. As you can imagine, I wanted to use the laser cutter to scratch build this bridge because, again, as you'll see, there's certainly nothing going to be kind of ready to run available for this. And anyway, the whole kind of project, building up from scratch, was always going to be a bit of fun. But let's get over to layout. I'll show you what the challenge looks like. And then we'll go through the process of building that up. This is the area I'm going to be tackling because it is really a kind of a keystone area. And what I'm going to be doing is putting the bridge in here because this is a kind of a key part that all the rest of the landscape is going to kind of key off. So you'll have seen I've added some straight pieces here and on the back. Now that's where the bridge sides are going to be, and that gives me a nice flat edge away from the track. That's not going to get caught by anything going past. So the next job is going to be to put some walls up either side of the heritage line underneath there. Now, I'm sure many of you watching the video when faced with a project like this will actually plan it out in quite a lot of detail and work out exactly what you're going to achieve. I'm going to do a little bit different. In that I've got an idea what I want to do in my head, but the exact kind of measurements and how it's all going to end up, I'm going to kind of figure out as I go through the process. So to start with, I'm going to take a look at a couple of photos of bridges of a similar type in the area that I'm modeling. So let's take a look at those and then come back and just talk about the process. So the area I am modelling is around kind of West Berkshire and North Hampshire, the kind of area between the kind of the western region and the southern region. So a good place to go look for relevant architecture is around Basingstoke. So trains from Reading operated by GWR do still run into Basingstoke station, but the main lines through here are South Western Railway. But it's perfect for that kind of architecture that we're looking for to add some interest to the layout. If you know Basingstoke, you will know that just to the west of the station, there is Chapel Hill runs underneath the railway. And that's a very interesting place to go look. So let's just drop our little person onto the map and have a look. So if I just spin round, what you'll be able to see is lots of bits of bridge. Now you'll see that the main kind of bridge through here is in two parts. You've got this old kind of brick arch, and I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this is the original railway that the London and South Western would have built, and then more recently this extra bit was kind of built on this side to kind of widen the number of running lines. But it's these kind of bits of bridge that I'm most interested in. I'm less interested in the tunnel for the layout here. So let's just have a kind of a quick look at what we've got. So we can see we've got these kind of girder structures in here with a brick wall. We've got some kind of beams underneath, very little in the way of decoration. But kind of structurally, all of the strength is up there in that kind of steel work. Let's just move this way slightly and spin around. And then you'll see from the outside, we've got brick pillars. There's a little bit of brick underneath that kind of girder section. But again, you've kind of got this kind of girder on here, and then a kind of a plate side on there. So we're not going to be copying this exactly, but this is just giving us a good idea about what kind of architecture and kind of structural features we're going to be looking at. So if you imagine our heritage line, it's only going to be a single track going through there. So this is obviously a bit wider than that. So we'd have our kind of other pillar in here somewhere. And a second place to do a little bit of research is here, right next to Reading West Station. So the A329 you can see here is Oxford Road, and where the railway goes over the road here, it's a very interesting bridge that we're going to have a look at. Something you might not be aware of, this is the area that Kate Winslet is actually from. I believe she was stood down here on Oxford Road giving an interview in her episode of Who Do You Think You Are? But anyway, let's take a look at our rail bridge. So if we drop ourselves on here, and we can see here there's obviously a bit of construction work going on here when the photo was taken. But we have a very kind of similar style of bridge to the one that we're going to be putting in. So this bridge is very similar to the one that we're going to be modelling. We can see these structures around the bridge in terms of the supports. They're going to be very similar to what we're going to be doing. And we can see we have so these kind of solid bridge sides. They're going to be quite similar to ours. So let's just have a zoom underneath and take a look from the other side. So very different looking bridge from Basingstoke, but actually very similar construction in terms of this kind of steelwork, the riveting on the sides, the brick support underneath, and these kind of red brick supports. So hopefully that's enough information and research for us to go and start designing the bridge. So as I said, my process will be to put the sides in. Once the sides are in, I will then figure out what kind of abutments and kind of ends to the kind of the bridge I need, and so do it that way round rather than kind of measure everything out and kind of plan it all out in detail. I'll do it that way round. Here we are in Lightburn. It's not really meant as design software, but for these type of projects, I actually find it works really, really nicely. So what are we looking at here? Well, if I zoom in, let's just look at, so this section in here is going to be cut onto 5mm ply, and this is effectively going to be the back wall of our bridge. You'll notice that it's got a flat end, and then it's got this kind of serrated edge. So our bricks can link together because this is going to link together with this section here. And together they are going to form the entire kind of length underneath that, well, alongside the heritage line as it passes underneath the western lines. I'm engraving the bricks directly onto the 5mm ply, and then the red line you can see is where that will then kind of cut out around the edge of that. Now, on top of that, to add a little bit of variation and add some interest, we are going to have some pillars, which are going to be, in this case, cut onto 1.6mm balsa wood. We've also then got some kind of pieces down the bottom and up the top. The ones at the top are kind of like, almost like that kind of structural piece that you saw on those photos. And then the rest of it's just really kind of decoration, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then we've just got the same for each piece. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these kind of pillars on that on this side, and then this will be repeated on the other side for the other side of the heritage line as well. So next job is going to be to get these onto the laser cutter and cut them on the various kind of thicknesses that we're going to need. So we're going to need some 5mm ply and some 1.6mm balsa wood. Here are our 5mm plywood pieces off the laser cutter. Time to get these painted now. So I'm going to use some Humbrol 70. It's kind of a wine colour. It's actually redder than it appears on camera here. So usual technique I'm going to use with wood for that. You can see that the brick has been etched directly into that plywood. And you see we've got a straight edge on one end, as I mentioned when we looked at Lightburn. And then you can see that we can fit these two sections together like this. And that's going to form quite a nice, neat join, even though that's going to be underneath the running lines. Okay, right, let's go on with painting. These pieces have now been painted. The technique I'm going to use now is the same one as usual. Cover them with some matte lacquer, and then we'll go over with our mortar wash. I'm going to be mounting all of this onto some 12mm ply, and then that 12mm ply is what's going to then be stuck onto the layout. So this is just a test fit, just to make sure everything is good. We know that fits, so we've just got some PVA on the back of these and some clamps just to hold that in place while it all goes off. And I've now cut all the decorations and those have all been painted, so those will all get fitted once all that glue's dried. And that is both sections of wall all completed. So they've all been cut, painted, added the mortar wash and gone over with some weathering, my usual technique of a little bit of panel liner around the edges, and then some weathering powders just to add a little bit of dirt to that. And obviously this brickwork will have been there for, in reality, for close on 100 years. So you can see that looks pretty kind of manky. Obviously you were going to have had steam locos going under there as well. So, and ironically, you probably won't see a great deal of this either. But those are now all ready to fit onto either side of the heritage line underneath the main running lines. With the camera down here, hopefully you can see how that wall's been fixed in place. I've just used grab adhesive on the top and on the edge there, and then put a couple of little spaces in, which are just offcuts from the laser cutter, just to keep that propped up while the adhesive goes off. Once that's done, that little gap between the ballast shoulder and the bottom of the wall, I'm going to fill with some of the spare of my sand grout kind of gravelly mix that I used on the car park. And then once that's all done, I will then do the other side, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Because once that's all in place, then we can start measuring up for these kind of end pieces, which will then be the kind of the pillars, the bridge supports, and we can get then our kind of box girder bits in place. And this is what we're looking like now. Both sides are in place. You can see the patterning on the wall there, and hopefully you can see right through there. I will just show you very quickly what that looks like from the other end. And here we have from the other side, you can see the track stretching through that bridge there. So next job now is going to be to sort out some supports for each of these kind of sides here. Obviously you're going to have then the bridge sides and girder going across here. So crack on with that job next. And just to give a sense of what the front face of the bridges is going to be like, I'm going to use Peco bridge sides. I've got a couple to choose from. These ones are actually off my childhood layout. I think this is the only bit that survives, with an I-beam underneath it, and then brick supporting pillars wherever we need to kind of fit those in place. So that's the general kind of look. It's going to look a bit odd in some ways because the other side is at a very different angle to that. But unfortunately, with the geometry we've got, that's just the way things are going to happen. I haven't figured out if I'm going to put kind of additional kind of girder supports in between the running lines. The problem is that the track is curved, and therefore using straight sections there's going to be a challenge without fouling any of the lines. So we'll see how that goes at the end probably. These are our bridge sides with the I-beams. They're still in the process of being painted, so I'm using Humbrol 96 for these. Once they're painted, I'm then going to do some weathering to them, particularly around all the rivet holes on them. We're going to use some rust around them, and obviously just to take that kind of little bit of a shine that's on there, even though it is matte paint, there's a little bit of a shine to it that we want to take off with some weathering powder. But then when they're done, they can then be fit in place. At the same time, I've been producing some of the supporting pillars. So the idea is that those are going to fit underneath. So that girder is effectively going to sit on that brick column that gives us enough clearance underneath. I may trim the top down a little bit. I think that looks a little bit too high, so I may well bring that down to in line with the top of that kind of curve. Just that looks a little bit nicer. I'm midway through painting the bridge side, so I just thought I'd show you the process for that. So the bottom one here is just painted with matte 96 enamel from Humbrol. And then once that's dried, I've then used dry brushing just to go into the middle of each panel, and I've used Vallejo turquoise and Vallejo medium blue, just to give that kind of sun-faded effect on the paint. And then if I flip the right one over, you can then see what the next stage is, which I've used Rail Match, both light and dark rust. I've just gone around all the rivets, and just kind of, because that's, if you look at these kind of bridges, you see that all the areas around the rivets and all kind of in the corners are all the bits that rust first, and then obviously rust then runs down with rainwater. So what I've got to do now is I'm going to go over that with some weathering powder. So I'm going to use some black just to tone that down ever so slightly, and then use a little bit of rust as well just to kind of add some extra streaks. Obviously, I've got to repeat that process for both bridge sides and both sides of them. So I'll come back when that's done. I've moved on and made a bit of progress. So as I mentioned, I've just toned down that bridge slightly. It's the first time I've ever weathered something like this, so I'm not fully happy with it, but I think it's good enough for now. And you will also have noticed that I've added a bit of landscaping in around those bridge pillars and the wings. So I'm just going to keep going with that. I'm going to now fill in those gaps by measuring and custom cutting some pieces. So that's, I guess, the advantage to this approach, is that now I've kind of got the main structural elements and I can just kind of measure up what's needed and then get those cut specifically and put into place. So probably the next time you see it, those gaps will have been filled in and will be a bit closer to the finish. And there we have things. You can see I've popped just a few capping stones on there. They still need a little bit of weathering, but otherwise I think we're looking in fairly good shape. A few little bits of touching up, a few little decorations still to add as well. But I'm going to leave things there for this video. I'll just show you from the other side as well. But I'm really happy with how they look from the ends. And here we are from the other side. Landscape obviously isn't finished around the bridge, and the capping stones haven't been added here. Let me just give you a view down through there if I can. So I'm more than happy with how that's come out. The one thing I'm not overly happy with at this point is just the way that this looks. It might look okay actually in this video, but there's some angles where it looks a bit odd just because of the geometry of the whole kind of landscape and the way that line goes underneath the main lines on a curve. I think once the scenery is done and these are kind of bedded in a little bit better, then I think that will look a bit, I think it will look a little bit less odd, but it probably doesn't come across on the camera at all. It probably looks all right on the camera. But yeah, overall, really happy. And I will just leave you with a couple of running shots of trains using the new bridge. The bridge is now in place and that end of the layout is looking a whole lot better. Now I was a little bit worried about how that was all going to turn out, but I think that even though there's still a little bit of work to do blending the rest of the scenery in to that part of the layout, I think that's a really good kind of keystone piece that's put in place, and that gives me lots of other projects I can be working on around there. Not that I should be working on those because I'm supposed to be laying these main lines. Hopefully we'll get back to that kind of track laying as soon as possible. I'm going to pause with the bridge there because I think it's important to get things like ballasting done on the main lines on the top, just so we can then start to blend everything in, thinking about those additional bridge girders up the top there, if they're going to be possible to put in at all. So I'm going to leave that there for today. I hope you enjoyed the process of going from a kind of a quite, from my perspective, certainly quite a daunting project. Again, building it up step by step, and then ending up with something that I think kind of really looks the part down the end of the layout, and gives me a little bit more opportunity to work down there. I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you for watching. In a second, there's going to be 2 more videos from the channel popping up. So if you haven't seen those, please do feel free to take a look. There's also going to be a subscribe button over there. And I will be back soon with another video, and I shall see you all soon. Bye-bye.